Let's talk some chess. We've got game 13 of the World Chess Championship. Jan Nepomniachtchi with the white pieces, Ding Liren with the black pieces. It's all knotted up at 6 points apiece, and this is Jan's last game with the white pieces. Then Ding will have one game with the white pieces, and then we'll go into the tiebreak. So obviously, would behoove Jan to get a win here, Ding trying to win or to draw, but it's very high stakes now because there are just 2 games left. So Jan kicks us off with, before the tiebreak, 2 games left before the tiebreak. Jan kicks us off with e4. We have e5 by Ding, knight to f3, knight to c6, and then the Ruy Lopez, which we've seen in this match before from Jan. Bishop brought all the way out to b5. Ding wants to kick this away with the Morphy defense, so he plays a6. This obviously comes to an attack on the bishop, so the bishop must be retreated, and it is retreated to a4, so maintaining the attack on this knight. Ding brings out his other knight to f6, which also comes with an attack on the undefended e4 pawn. So for now, Jan ignores it. He just castles kingside, sort of defending it indirectly. If knight takes on e4, then Jan can probably just take back with the knight on e5, and now this is a better position for white. Your king is safe. You have the knight and the bishop and other pieces ready to jump into the game and mount an attack. So looks like a free pawn, but is really not. And of course, Ding knows that and just puts his bishop calmly on e7, ignoring the pawn for now and preparing to castle kingside. Jan now protects the pawn. He plays d3, and we have b5 from Ding, pushing this bishop back even more, so the bishop retreats to the only free square, b3, where it now will control this nice long diagonal. Ding plays d6, opening up some development squares for his own light squared bishop, and Jan responds with c3. Ding castles kingside, so now both players have safely tucked their kings away on the king side. They both have a knight defending on f3 and f6. Jan plays h3, probably wants to stop the knight from jumping to g4, but also maybe worried about the bishop joining in on g4 and pinning the knight to the queen, so h3 stops both of those threats. And sort of as if in response, Ding fianchettos his bishop to b7. So now controlling this long diagonal. We then have bishop to e3 by Jan, developing another piece. And this is a move that the engine was sort of looking for the past couple moves, knight to a5. And this clears space for the light squared bishop, but also comes with an attack on Jan's light squared bishop, which is very powerful on this diagonal. Jan does not want to trade the bishop away, but unfortunately he has to move it, and he does to c2, where it is much less powerful stacked behind these 2 pawns. Ding plays c5, so hemming this bishop in a bit more, trying to expand on the queen side, and Jan responds by just developing his final piece, his final minor piece, with knight to d2, nicely connecting the knights here. We have rook to e8 by Ding, getting the rook out from behind the king's pawns, and then we have a4 by Jan, so pushing back on Ding's expansion on the queen side. You probably don't want to take here, and then either the bishop takes or the rook takes. Both look good. The bishop taking comes with the tempo on the rook, so Ding doesn't take here, and he just plays h6. Probably worried about similar threats of Jan putting his knight or his bishop on g5. Jan strikes in the center with d4, so this is a strongly supported move. There is a pawn protecting it, a knight, and a bishop, so maybe waiting to play this move for a while and now has the support for it. Ding takes, he takes on d5, Jan takes back, Ding takes back, and Jan takes with the knight. So now the center has been cleared out a bit. There's a lot less tension in the center, and you're going to see the bishops get a lot more powerful as the game goes on. We have knight to c4 by Ding, so now the knight is on a much more useful square. It's deep in black's position. It's threatening sort of a bunch of things. It's obviously threatening this bishop on e3. It's threatening this pawn on b2. So Jan has to be careful here, and here he just takes back with the knight. Doesn't want to deal with these threats. Takes back with a knight on c4. The engine doesn't love this move, but I think it's a reasonable move for any human to play. Ding takes back with a pawn, and then Jan makes, I think, the first kind of big mistake of the game, and he plays f3. And the engine really doesn't like this. Here the engine, instead of f3, would much prefer for Jan to play queen to e2, putting pressure on this passed pawn. Not passed pawn. Hopefully passed pawn for Ding, but putting pressure on this advanced pawn. This sort of forces Ding to defend, so he has to play rook to c8. And then Jan would be able to get in this f3 move, protecting his e4 pawn. So the idea is Jan wants to protect this pawn because it's attacked twice by the knight and the bishop. But first, you want to get your queen to e2, because then you get sort of the series of moves. Ding, in this case, would likely retreat his bishop, and this is just sort of just to clarify, this is the engine line. This did not happen in the game. Ding would retreat his bishop to f8 because you want to prevent the knight from coming to f5 with a tempo on the bishop, and then this allows rook to d1 by white, d5 by black. Knight now comes to f5, which is a nice square for the knight. We have queen to c7, bishop to d4, pawn takes, knight takes, and then, and this is kind of the fun part, this is why I wanted to show this line, you get knight takes on h6 with check. So black obviously takes back with the pawn, but then you get this queen to g4 check. And here's the idea behind that queen to e2 move. Not only did you force black to kind of waste a move protecting this pawn, but now you can jump to g4 with check. You block with a knight if with the black pieces, but then you get this rook lift to f5 for white. Queen comes in to protect the knight, but that's not going to stop h4. The knight is pinned, it's going to fall to the pawn, and after the bishop blocks, you just get pawn takes knight. The material is equalized, and there's some more in this line, but this would lead to an equal position for both. We're just going to get essentially a bunch of trades. All the pieces will be traded off, and we're going to end up in this like rook and pawn to endgame. So that's what the engine wanted Jan to play and go into that line, but instead Jan just plays f3. But the problem is now his queen is not on e2, which means it does not threaten this pawn, which means black does not have to waste a move protecting that pawn, which means Ding can right away just play this bishop to f8 move, getting the bishop out of harm's way if the knight were to come to f5, and also opening up the rook on the e file. So now Jan retreats his own bishop to f2, again sort of getting it out of the way of this file potentially opening up, also any threats from this knight if they were to occur, but Ding can now push on with d5. Jan takes, Ding takes, and now the position's starting to look a little bit better for black here. So the white king's pawns are a little bit disoriented. This bishop is very powerful, and once the knight moves, it will be unleashed. The rook controls an open file, so already starting to look a little bit better here for black. Jan tries to contest in the center by playing bishop to e4, and here Ding actually sort of relinquishes his control with rook to e5. This is a nice, nice looking rook lift for sure. Gets the rook in a threatening position, but the engine here, let me just scroll to the line. The engine here would prefer rook to b8. And now the idea is that if Jan trades, which is the suggested move, after a couple of trades and the bishop moving to c8, you open up this attack of the rook on the b2 pawn. And that obviously can't happen if your rook is not on b2. So after a couple of more moves, you bring the bishop to d7, attacking this pawn, so now the queen is defending both of these pawns. White moves the knight to e2, which opens up discovered attack on the queen and also on the bishop, so the queen has to be careful. But queen to c6 solves that problem, it defends the bishop, and now we have a double attack on this pawn. So black can defend with knight to c3, but then we have a really nice rook lift, rook to b3, protected by the pawn, attacking the knight, and the knight can be protected with bishop to d4, but then you're just going to get the rooks being doubled up on the b file. Knight moves away to e4, and then finally you're just going to get the queen taking on a4. And now black is down a pawn. There's a lot of pressure on this b pawn. White doesn't really have much to show for it. So this was what the engine wanted Ding to play, but instead he just played this rook lift to e5, and now the rook is not on, the other rook is not on b8, so you don't have this kind of threatening counter attack. Jan brings his own rook to c1, now puts some pressure on this advanced black pawn on the 4th rank, and Ding defends it now with rook to c8. Here we have Jan playing the knight to e2, so opening up an attack of the queen on the bishop, and now Ding makes the other kind of mistake that actually allows Jan to get back to equality. So the engine here, this is still a stronger position for black, but the engine here prefers, let me just go into the line I made, the engine here prefers queen to e8 instead of queen to e7. And it seems like the idea here is that you don't want to hem in your dark squared bishop because that's going to become important in the attack. So after this, the suggested move is knight to d4, and then the engine suggests that black makes the exchange sacrifice, so rook for bishop, pawn takes back, but then you get this knight to f4. And now this is a really pesky knight to deal with, and you've also unleashed your bishop on this diagonal. Black's attacking this pawn twice, and white is defending it 0 times, so that's going to be tricky. White defends with rook to e1, but then you get this black rook lift to c5, then rook lift to c3 with the white pieces, but then the black rook is coming to g5, and now you have the knight and the rook eyeing this weak g1 pawn. The bishop is not far from swinging in, so this is really trouble for white. White can defend with rook to, bishop to g3, but then you get knight to d3. So just some really aggressive moves. The knight is protected by the pawn. It's also attacking the rook. So here white would just give up the exchange. Rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes. But then finally the idea behind this, I think, queen to e8 move is now you can develop the bishop to c5. And now basically you have two extremely active bishops on these powerful diagonals. The knight is pinned. There are only 2 pawns near the king, and they're discombobulated. The rook is attacking the bishop. The queen is on a nice file. So this would be very difficult to play for white. Black has a really powerful attack here, and black's king is super safe. So that's the move that the computer wanted Ding to play, but instead Ding puts his queen in front of the bishop, and now there's no bishop to c5. You're not going to get your after all those moves, you're not going to get your bishop out in the same attacking way. At least that's what it seems the computer is saying. So now the position, according to the engine, is actually even, and Jan plays the correct move here, which is queen to d4. Just getting the queen central, adding some pressure to this pawn, which is now attacked twice by white's pieces, adding some pressure to the black rook in case the black queen ever moves. So a handy move here. Here, Ding pushes f5, threatening this bishop, and in response, Jan ignores it and just puts his own bishop on g3, attacking the rook. So here, basically your rook is threatened. So there's a lot of things you can do, but Ding just decides to sack the exchange, takes the bishop on e4. Jan takes back with a pawn, and now queen takes on e4, offering up a queen trade. Jan accepts. We have pawn takes, and now you can sort of look at the material, and black is up a, what's the right way to say this? Black is white is up the exchange, so white has a, I can't count. White is up the exchange. White has a rook for a bishop, but black has these 2 pretty advanced pawns. This is itself a passed pawn, and black's king is relatively safer. Black has the bishop pair, so this is an even position, even though white is up the exchange. Jan starts off by putting his rook on the open d file, obviously attacks the knight, even though it is currently defended by the bishop, but Ding moves it anyway. He moves it to b4, getting it in a more threatening position. We have a really nice rook lift here, so a nice sort of rook shuffle and lift up to e7, attacking the bishop, but in between move here, Ding just plays bishop to c5. Finally this nice bishop to c5 move, delivering check on the king. King retreats to h2, and then Ding attacks the rook, simultaneously defends his bishop and attacks the rook with bishop to c6. Rook moves to c7. Looks like a crazy move, but the bishop is defending the rook, so you're not just giving away your rook. Ding makes the trade, and then the bishop comes to d5. And already you can see these are 2 pretty, even though white has a rook for a bishop, these are 2 pretty powerful rooks. 2 pretty powerful bishops. They're going to be tough to deal with, and they're definitely worth a bishop and a rook. Jan brings his knight to c3, attacking this light squared bishop, but Ding just responds to an attack of his own, knight to d3. This attacks the rook. Obviously, you'd rather preserve the rook, which Jan does. He brings the rook to c2, and then Ding brings his bishop to safety on c7. Jan plays a5. It was being attacked. The pawn was being attacked by the bishop on a4, so it just gets it out of harm's way. Now it's being defended by his own bishop, and then Ding improves the position of his king with king to f7. We have rook to e2. Now a double attack is being threatened on this pawn by the knight and the rook. It's only defended once by the bishop. So to deal with this, Ding just plays knight to c1. This obviously attacks the rook. So now you can't necessarily, there's not much to do here. If you take with the knight, then you get knight takes rook, knight takes bishop. And now this is probably still a draw, maybe slightly better for black because you have the extra pawn, but probably still a draw, so it doesn't change anything. And if you obviously take with the rook, then you just get bishop takes, knight takes, and then the same sort of situation. So you have to move your rook, and Jan just moves it to e1, attacking the knight. Ding moves it back, attacking the rook. Jan moves it back, Ding moves it back, Jan moves it back, Ding moves it back, and then in this position, they agreed to a draw, and the World Chess Championship Game 13 ended in a draw. Interestingly, the engine likes a different move here. I think, if I remember correctly, it likes d1, rook to d1. It says white has like a very slight advantage here instead of just going for the repetition. But actually, I played it out like 60 moves, and you're basically just getting, these bishops dancing around, and it's unclear if white actually gains anything by this, because it's just really hard to deal with these bishops. This bishop, the dark squared bishop, can kind of just sit on d4 and defend. I guess a better example is this light squared bishop can do a really good job defending these two pawns. It can defend this pawn easily, and it's just take my word for it that I played it a bunch of moves, and maybe if the engines played for like 200 moves, there would be a clear advantage. But I think it was very reasonable for Jan to agree to a draw here, just because it's a completely knotted up position. So anyways, kind of a fun game. Not too many fireworks. We saw some interesting lines in the middle, but nothing too crazy happened. One final game left. Ding is going to play with white pieces, and if he wins, that's it. But if it's a draw, we're going to go to tiebreakers. And either way, it's been a really entertaining and amazing championship. So thanks for tuning in. Keep watching the championship, and hope you keep tuning into these reviews. Feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.